and a very warm welcome to the Liz Earle Wellbeing Show. Now, today I am joined by a very interesting guest who promises to share with us the secret to happiness. Yep, absolutely. Now, interestingly, he was the chief business officer at Google for a number of years, at a time when he was spearheading the company's most radical expansion into driverless cars and a balloon-powered internet. And during this time, as he shares in his book called Solve for Happiness, Engineer Your Path to Joy, he was paid handsomely, he was happily married with 2 lovely children, plenty of cash, and yet despite all of this, he didn't feel happy. Yeah, the cars, the clothes, the holidays didn't seem to bring him long-lasting joy. Rather, the more he had, the worse, he says, he felt. So he put his engineering brain to task to find a solution to contentment. And he landed on the equation that happiness is our perception of our own lives minus the expectation of how life should be. Something that we are going to dive into in more detail in this episode. But then tragically, in 2014, he lost his precious 21-year-old son, Ali, during a perfectly routine, simple operation. And his own happiness theory was, of course, majorly put to the test. Now, in the book, he details his own experience with grief, depression, and recovery, and using the same, quote, moonshot mindset that had helped him achieve incredible things in his professional life at Google and beyond. Mo is seeking to make 1 billion more people happy. Yes, 1 billion, regardless of their situation in life. So without further ado, let's hear from Mo. So Mo, welcome very much to my podcast. I am so thrilled to have you here. I'm a massive admirer of yours and all that you've achieved, and your backstory is just so inspiring. So thank you for finding the time to join us.
Absolutely. It's my absolute pleasure. It took us some time to arrange it, but I'm really, really excited and grateful to be here. Yeah.
So I'm just so interested in this equation for happiness. You know, you come from an engineering background. And Can you talk us through the equation? I mean, what is it? And is it real? Can we actually break it down into a simple equation?
It can be quite simple, actually, and quite predictable, really, like an equation. And I hope that doesn't scare our listeners. This is not a math podcast, but if you've observed every time in your life you ever felt happy and attempted to find a common sort of trend line for those moments in your life, you would realize that every single time you felt happy was not a result of a single event or a specific event in your life. It was a result of a comparison between that event and how you wanted life to be. In a very simple way, your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between every event of your life and your expectation of how that event should be, how life should behave. And if you subtract events minus expectations, if life meets your expectations, you're happy. If life misses your expectations, you're unhappy. And so when you get that kind of definition, that kind of accurate definition of what triggers happiness and what triggers unhappiness, it starts to become very, very manageable. You can actually do something in a predictable way, in a process-oriented way, in a methodic way, to achieve happiness more often.
So does that mean then that if you are a high achiever or very ambitious, you're less likely to be happy?
Yes. Oh, you know what I love about that question? It always comes to me from high achievers.
Well, I'm not sure I classify myself in that camp, but you have made me worry slightly.
Yeah. So it is true, by the way. Most high achievers are most of the time dissatisfied with life because, even though they achieve more than others, they still think that they can do better. They still think that they are falling short. And you know how it is. You run like mad and you score that goal, and suddenly it feels like the goalposts have been moving a little further, right? You get to point A. I mean, and by the way, that's not only high achievers. If you remember, you graduated and you just looked for your first job and you said, if I can get 100 pounds a month, that will be amazing. You got that, and what did you do? You said, I meant 150, and then you got that, and you said, oh, but I need a mortgage, maybe a little more. And the goal just keeps moving away. And for many of us, the way I define middle age crisis is when you actually get to a point where you've achieved almost all of those goals that you dreamt of, and then suddenly looked back and said, were these the right goals at all? Was that really what I wanted from my life? So from one side, yes, high achievers sadly end up unhappy even though they achieve, but also those who don't have high expectations from life seem to be quite happy. So if you go to India, if the expectation is I may not be able to eat every day, if I give you a bowl of rice, you're very happy. If you go, to the UK and you order the massive meal on the Deliveroo, you're unhappy because you wanted to go out and have that meal outside. Expectation makes a difference.
Yes.
But don't get me wrong. Huh? I'm not saying don't be ambitious. There is a difference between ambition and expectation. Ambition is what I do with my life. Huh? I wrote Solve for Happy, my book, to attempt to get to 10 million people very quickly. My message of happiness, actually, because of Channel 4 and PR that we did in the UK, the message was, I think we reached 87 million people in the first 8 weeks.
Wow.
And because of that, I went back and sort of upgraded the mission, if you want, from 10 million happy to a billion happy. Right now, a billion, exactly. That's the kind of reaction I want, because a billion is not a realistic expectation, but it's a wonderful, wonderful ambition, right? Ambition is that directional, you know, aspiration you want to give yourself, either for your life or for the next 3 to 4 years or for your relationships or whatever that is. It's an ambition, and that means directionally you're going to wake up every morning and try to go in that direction, right? But if you don't achieve a billion happy, do you think I will, on my deathbed, fall down and break down and cry and go like I'm a failure? No, if I make you happy today, that's more than enough.
Yeah.
So my expectation is realistic. My expectation is it took Jesus, 2,000 years to reach a billion people. Huh? So who am I? I'm never going to get to that, but it's nice. It's nice to stretch yourself as long as it doesn't make you unhappy to miss that.
That's a really, really great way of framing it. And you said there about getting to middle age and midlife crisis, and then realizing, were those goals right? Had I set my happiness on the right things? Your experience, I think it shows just that. You were extremely successful, are extremely successful, but you were working with Google. You had more money than sense. You had everything in life, an amazing marriage and family, and yet you weren't happy. Is that really true?
Yeah, it is very, very true. And I look back at it now and I think I was one of the most fortunate, because I got my middle age crisis when I was 29, right?
Mm.
Which really is, again, it's not an age. Huh? It is basically you set yourself up with a few dreams and then you achieve them and you go like, that's it. It's all of those empty promises they made me, that the car is going to make me happy and the expensive watch is going to make me happy and the beautiful woman in my life. I mean, honestly, she did make me very happy. But you know how often it is, huh, that you set yourself a target, and that target then is achieved, and you go like, "That's what was that?" Right? And for me, I had everything. I had, remember, I'm Egyptian, born and raised in Egypt, educated in a public university and public school in Egypt. And so, I didn't expect to go that far. And at age 25, when myself and my college sweetheart, we got married, we were the happiest people ever. We didn't have enough to go through the month. As a matter of fact, at the end of the month, we would have to go spend more time with our loved parents because we were hungry. And
Yes.
it is, and then by age 29, I had been a stock market trader. I used my math skill to literally print money. I was a director at a major consumer goods company in Dubai, tax free. I had the cars, the beautiful wife that gave me two wonderful kids, and I was miserable. Like if
Miserable.
I had, if I had been diagnosed, I would have definitely been diagnosed clinically depressed, right? And this is not unusual, Liz. I mean, when I started my happiness mission, I train tens of thousands of people every year, but of those, often every year, often, as we say in the UK, there are, maybe 100 of them that are extremely high net worth individuals, billionaires, right? And they're miserable. Absolutely. Money doesn't make you happy. I mean, think of the last time that you could purchase anything with money that made you happy for more than a few hours or a few days, right? There is no inherent happiness in things. And that's, by the way, the core of the equation. The core of the equation is events minus expectations. There is a very strange chemistry in our brain. When the events become better, our expectations become higher.
It keeps
Okay?
going.
It keeps going. I mean, look at Northern Europe. Northern Europe has the highest subjective well-being in the world. I mean, if you compare someone living in Norway, their needs are met much better than someone living in Brazil, right? But the truth is, because of the increase in subjective well-being, people start to believe that life owes them something, that there is some sort of a service level agreement between you and life, that things are not supposed to go wrong, like I'm supposed to be cared for. But things go wrong. You suffer loss, your partner fights with you, you get stuck in traffic, sometimes you get sick, whatever. Things do go wrong. And you compare that to an expectation of perfection, and what ends up happening is you feel unhappy, right? And I was in that space.
I have heard counsellors who have therapy sessions with couples, for example, say that one of the hardest things to treat is this entitlement.
Totally.
That we believe we are entitled to something.
Totally. It is so, I say that with a lot of sensitivity, of course, because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But in the Middle East, where I come from, one of the most beautiful aspects of our culture is a culture of gifting, right? So it's highly expected that instead of asking for things, you give things, okay? And it's actually quite rude to not accept a gift. So when you're given something, you accept it, and then your role is to go back a bit later and give back a gift. And so in relationships with my wonderful ex-wife, which was one of the biggest gifts I've ever been given, the idea wasn't about the individualistic Western way. It was about, how can I make her happy? Contribute to her happiness. You can't really make anyone happy. But in not really thinking about, how am I going to make myself happy? Because in return, she would want to try her best to make me happy. My gift to her is what I can give, and her gift to me is what she can give. And that dynamic is very, very different than the highly individualistic, a bit self-centered approach that we get, educated or conditioned to think about in the West. And it culturally, and this is, by the way, not just the Middle East. This is the case in India and Latin America and so many places that are considered emerging markets, or third world countries sometimes, because we're much more trained to believe that our happiness is the happiness of our community, of the people that we love, of it's not about my individual success, it's our success as a whole. And when you start to think about those things, they shift your perspective, right? They shift your approach to things, and they get you to see things differently.
Talking about seeing things differently, your approach is very analytical. And I've heard you say that you're not really a fan of using some of the things that we've become to accept for becoming tools of happiness, things like mindfulness and being more spiritual. Do you see that as something that actually doesn't really factor into this?
I am really spiritual, as spiritual as I can, as I hope to be able to be, right? I'm even religious in a very unusual way, if you want. But we should probably define spiritual, because that's an important topic. Let's come back to this in a minute. I don't know how to tell you this. Using an electric scooter is a good thing in your life, okay? But it's not for everyone. Can we agree that? Right?
Yeah.
And so What normally happens, and I say that again with a lot of respect, is in the West, we productize everything. We give it a brand, we give it a look, we have a little music in the background and an image and an ego and and so meditation and mindfulness are fundamental to your happiness, but they're fundamental when you do them properly. And so on my podcast on Slow Mo, I interviewed one of my dear friends, Matthew Ricard, who is 40 years monk, one of the happiest people in the world because of the way his brain is restructured. But Matthew, when you talk to him, he will tell you openly his happiest times when he was in solitary isolation of silence for years at a time. Now that is the kind of practice that you need to rewire your prefrontal cortex, to rewire your insula to the point where those things work. And a typical monk practice is 17 years of meditation for several hours a day.
Wow.
Now, we in the UK, for example, less than 10% of people will meditate for more than 10 minutes a month. Right? Now, yeah, and when you start to think about it this way, you start to realize that we're selling to them something, the image, the persona, the fluffy white dress, the image of meditation, but we're not actually saying the truth. And the truth is our modern day warrior lifestyle does not allow you to do what a proper practitioner of those things should do. So you have to supplement those things with practices that fit in the modern world. Okay. Otherwise, you're not practicing enough. And people will say, meditate, even if it's 10 minutes a day. And I absolutely agree. 10 minutes a day is amazing because of neuroplasticity. But if you really want to get there, if we really want to give people the promise, then hold on. You need to be present a lot more often in the day. So, in my next book, now it's become the third book, I call it That Little Voice in Your Head. I talk about what I call meditation in the modern world. Okay. And to meditate in the modern world, you don't need to say you don't need to sit in a specific, formation. You don't need to listen to guided meditation. This is not meditation. Meditation is the act of focusing your thoughts on something other than thoughts. Okay. And so when we say, focus on your breathing, you could focus on your breathing, you could focus on the itch on your nose, you could focus on the pain in your back, you could focus on the sounds of the cars outside. Whatever it is that you focus on is an exercise that gets you away from that incessant thinking, the default mode network, and into deliberate attention. And deliberate attention is the key. That's what we're trying to get to train our minds to be able to take control of those minds and not let them wander all the time. Now, what are those practices? You can, as I said, you can focus on the itch on your nose, but you can also focus on the grain of the wood on the coffee table that you're sitting in front of to have your coffee. Okay, you can literally follow the grain. You can focus on the number 6 on the cars that are passing by. You can focus on the color red in the room that you're in. You can focus on 100,000 things. Or what my favorite is, I can focus on your eyes when I'm talking to you right now. Right? I can focus on your nods. I can connect to you as a human. I can focus on my own self as a human. I can focus on my emotions and really connect with my emotions. I have a daily exercise that maybe 4 times a week that I call Meet Becky, which is basically my idea of being able to listen to the thoughts in my head, but really focus on them. And that's all you need to do. Huh? This is an exercise of deliberate attention so that through neuroplasticity, day after day after day after day, you start to grow those parts of your brain that are needed for you to find that calm and peace. Now, 10 minutes of meditation in the morning, absolutely mandatory. But on a good day, by having those practices of meditation in the modern world, I could be meditating 6 to 7 hours. Right? If I pay attention to every human being that comes to me, turn my body to them, listen to them fully, attentively. If I pay attention to my surroundings and truly smell the coffee if I'm in a coffee shop, or if, truly make a wonderful coffee if I'm making a coffee in the morning, all of that is meditation. All of that is deliberate attention.
Right. And taking it away from the thought, and therefore the other side of that is to give deliberate attention to thought and have those times where you're going.
So that's the Jedi master level. So the Jedi, your black belt level is to start to have awareness of everything around you, okay, or everything inside you, in the physical form. The Jedi master level is to become aware of what you're aware of, okay, or to become aware when you lose awareness. That is the kink of all awareness, okay, is to say, oh my God, I slipped there. I wasn't here for a while. I was inside my head. Okay, to find that. And by the way, again, deliberate attention, just like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and you put on weights that you lift that are easy for you to lift, you're not exercising. The exercise. I hosted Tupton Golan, who's a very famous British monk. And he was talking about the idea of the ability to bring your brain back, your mind back. That's what you call it, brain. To bring your mind back to calmness when it strays. That is the exercise. This is meditation, yes. Right? And so the idea of realizing, recognizing that you're no longer aware, and then bringing it back to awareness. That's what builds your mindfulness strength. This is what builds the muscle. Okay? That's the idea of basically exercising by carrying just a little more weight than you can carry.
And that is actually making changes in the brain. It's interesting to hear you talk about neuroplasticity.
Oh, absolutely. So you see, again, I discuss this a lot in general. The idea of what they call hypofrontality, which is your lack of ability to pay deliberate attention to things, is highly correlated with most of the well-being or mental health challenges, right? So, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, depression, and many, many, many others of those negative, diagnoses that we find ourselves in are linked to the idea of not being able to pull your brain's attention when you need to, into the point that you want. And of course, we all know that. Once you let your brain go wild, what does it do? It focuses on the negative. It just goes and analyzes everything around it, looking for what's wrong with life. And so the idea of you taking your brain back and saying, hey, can we have a good conversation here? Can we actually be realistic about what's good and what's bad and what is missing and what is available? Can we actually stop being negative unnecessarily? Can we have a realistic view of life and recognize that we're living in an amazing part of the world where there is still good, and so on and so forth, right? Now, the thing about this is that, like your muscles, when you go to the gym, what you use grows and what you don't shrinks. So if you go to the gym every day and squat, you're going to look like a bear. Okay, it's going to be physically visible. You can see it. Similarly, if you complain, inside your brain, you're wiring the brain in a way where the brain starts to say, this activity is very repetitive. I need to be really good at it. So I'm going to increase my complain muscles. So that
I get better.
Absolutely. So you become better at complaining. And so I actually do an exercise when I used to teach people in physical classrooms. I used to tell people, try to remember the bad things about life and the good things about life, or the bad things about you and the good things about you. And most people will remember more bad than good. Okay. And then I ask them and say, why is that? Because we've trained our brain circuitry to find what's wrong. So the brain is really good at it. I mean, with all due respect, I was locked down in London. And I love the BBC because as a Middle Eastern, it was one of the sources of open information, if you want, the BBC World Service, uncensored. And when I was locked down in London, I tried for a few days to switch on the TV in the morning. And what does a typical news channel in the UK or anywhere in the world do?
We've had months and months of negativity, and it's
An entire lifetime of negativity. It starts with a
waiting.
corrupt politician that's doing something incredibly bad,
Yeah.
followed by something wrong with life, and something that's wrong with your own life, and then followed by someone is in distress, like a boy fell in a well somewhere, and then they close by a penguin kissed a cat and life is worth living. Get up and just try to continue with your life, right? And what are you training your brain? What are you training your brain? You're training your brain that there is so much wrong, that I need to focus on the wrong, that 4 parts to 1 part are wrong versus right. Okay. And again, on Slow Mo, one of the early episodes, I had Karen Guggenheim, the CEO of the World Happiness Summit. And I said, Karen, so what do you do about that? And she said, I schedule my anxiety. And I said,
Really?
and I said, yeah, I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I can't live without the news. So I watch the news every day from 2 to 2:30 p.m. And then I stop. And I laughed out loud. I said, oh, that's funny. I scheduled my anxiety between 2 and 2:10 around 4 months ago. Okay.
Yeah.
And I promise you, we're now December. I
Yeah.
have not watched the news since April.
That is,
And I'm alive and good.
yes.
Yeah, I'm alive and good. And when there is a lockdown around me, people text me. They say, hey, Mo,
Yeah, but even just to have that period of negativity free from the news, if you need that, to have it in the middle of the day, so you get up and your day's not ruined because it gets off to a really great start, and you
absolutely
get off onto the right foot. Then maybe you tune into a little bit because you need to, but then you've got plenty of time to process it, move on, have a nice evening, put it behind you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's deliberate attention.
Yes. Okay. I'm absolutely going to do that, because in the old days, before we had 24/7 news, you'd maybe get a morning newspaper and you'd read it once and you'd put it down, and that was it. There wasn't this constant bombardment from every angle.
You have to ask yourself in whose favor that is. I mean, one of my favorite books of all time is Freakonomics. And Freakonomics will tell you that you're not receiving 24 hours news because it's important for you, but because it's important for the news network.
Yes.
Because they need you to be there for 24 hours so that they can play ads for you for 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I know a couple of people close to me who've had serious mental health issues through literally just being locked down and playing 24/7 news. One poor person has actually, been sectioned, and these were perfectly rational, normal, no previous issues. So very quickly, I think that was the interesting thing with lockdown here, is mindsets. People's mindsets of negativity and fear can change so quickly. That was the extraordinary thing. More terrifying for me than the pandemic, in fact, was how quickly
Totally.
minds could be changed and controlled.
Totally. And you know what's amazing about the pandemic, Liz? I mean, the truth is, there are people that are really, really suffering. And there are people that are actually saying, oh my God, there is so much silver lining. I spend time with my kids, I don't have to commute. And nothing has unified us as humanity as this. We're all the same. We're all in this together. And the fact that some of us perceive it as the worst thing that ever happened, and some of us are seeing the silver lining. I mean, it's difficult. I'm not undermining the pressure and the difficulty and the challenge. But the truth is that basically goes back to the happiness equation. It's not about the event of life. It is about your ability to analyze that event and compare it properly to a realistic expectation. And I'll tell you openly, we're humans. We're supposed to get pandemics. This is how it is. We just forgot.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Illness and wellness are, two sides of the same coin, aren't they, I guess? And we have to learn
absolutely
to flip the right side more often than not. You talked about being in your late 20s and having everything and not being happy. What's been your own journey since then with happiness? When were you most happy and least happy? I know you've had.
I'm the happiest I have ever been right now.
Are you?
Is, oh my God! I lost my son, Habibi, Ali, 6 years ago, and I at the beginning thought that this was it, that this was the high point of my life, and it's now collapsed, and that's it, right? But the truth is, uh, I've never been happier. I wake up every morning and I put in a bit of effort that hopefully some days reaches 1,000 people, other days reaches 10,000 people, and I get all of those beautiful messages of people saying, "Thank you, that opened my eyes. I thought about something differently," and there is nothing on earth that will make you happier than making other people happy.
Yeah.
And I've never been happier. I mean, which actually again is an interesting thing, because when you think about the pandemic today, this is the golden age of empathy. Every time you wake up in the morning and you feel a little anxious, just say, okay, great, I've managed to feel similarly to how 20 to 30 of my friends are feeling. Empathy is to be able to feel what the other person is feeling. And
Yes.
I can promise you, anything negative that you're feeling today, your friends and loved ones are feeling. That's empathy, right? But then the challenge with empathy, of course, is that if you have too much of it and it's negative, 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 it distresses you. The only way empathy can work for you is to turn it into compassion, right?
Yeah.
Is to say, I feel lonely. So instead of sitting in the corner and crying about it, I'm going to reach out to someone, knowing through my empathy that they too feel lonely. And I'm going to give them a call and say, hey, want a virtual coffee? Let's talk about this for a while, right? Now, that idea of trying to make another person happy has completely flipped my life upside down. And I always say that, and it really touches my heart, because Ali was the love of my life. Ali was the and I say that with openness, but I've never loved anyone more than my kids. Okay,
Um,
Ali and Aya are my life. Okay, I loved my ex deeply, but not as much as Ali and Aya. And for Ali to be taken away, it's like taking a part of my heart.
and
But
he
that
died so
part,
tragically and so suddenly and so unexpectedly, didn't he?
yeah, it was a medical error, a surgical error, in a very, 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 very simple surgical operation. But the
Mm.
surgeon did 5 mistakes in a row, and couldn't fix them properly, and Ali was gone. And when you think about it, I mean, you're taking away part of my heart with this.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but it's been replaced with so much love,
Mm.
so much love. Like
Can you
Ali's.
genuinely say that you are happy since that event?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. I know this sounds crazy. Huh? First of all, you have to have a specific understanding of life and death to be able to be okay with losing a loved one, especially losing a child.
Yeah.
But the truth is this. The truth is, since Ali left us, his philosophy, what he taught me about happiness, has reached maybe 40, 50 million people.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you knew my son, I promise you, Habibi, he was so kind and so wise. If I had gone to him 6 years ago and said, Ali, would you give your life to make 50 million people happy? He would have said, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. I'll go right now.
mm.
Okay. And the truth is this, we are entitled. Okay. Because I could look at this and say, I lost my son. And I'd be correct in making that statement. But I could also look at it and say, I got my son, which most people don't understand. I never signed a deal with life that a little Yoda, who is the biggest blessing ever, is going to land in my life because I made love to the woman that I loved. Okay, and that this boy, who could have been a very difficult child, or maybe diagnosed with a difficult disease or whatever, came and blessed us for
Mm.
21 and a half years. Okay, and my brain has the tendency to say, life is so unfair, it took him away from you for the last 6 years. But life is so generous, it gave him to me for 21 and a half years.
Yes.
Now, be
Yes.
realistic. The truth is, I did not deserve that blessing in my life. It was a gift. And I appreciate the gift. And I would go through it again and again. The pain of losing him to have him.
Mm.
And we don't think that way.
No, we
But
don't.
but but you see, the truth of the event is Ali came for 21 and a half years. Amazing years. Laughter, fun, wisdom, love. If you'd been hugged once by Ali, you would take the pain for the rest of your life. Just one hug.
My
And I
goodness.
had so many of those hugs.
Yes. I've heard you say that there's a difference that we should draw between pain and suffering. Is that right?
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, and I think that is, I think, the key, which again brings us back to the happiness equation: events minus expectations. Okay, when events miss expectations, unhappiness happens as a survival mechanism. If you understand this, everything changes. Unhappiness is your brain's way of telling you, by the way, something's not perfect here. I'm sensing something that requires your attention. Okay? It's like a fire alarm. When you really think about it, it's basically saying, I'm suspecting there is a fire. I'm not sure there is one, but I'm suspecting there might be a fire. What do we do when fire alarms go off? We leave the building, right? That we do something about, we take action. If we don't leave the building, two bad things happen. One is you can be burned, not a very good idea. Okay, you haven't fixed the situation. And two, you're sitting in the noise. Okay, so the fire alarm going off is pain. You staying in the building is a choice of suffering. Is a choice of telling yourself, I'm going to stay in a bad situation and suffer the noise of the fire alarm. Now, let's take those in a happiness context. Pain is easier to understand in a physical form. You pour some hot water on your skin, you pull your hand away, right? Even though the feeling of hot water is not a feeling we like, we actually appreciate the pain because it helps us protect that precious part of us. Okay? Here's the interesting thing. Can you recall the last time you had physical pain and regenerate that in your body? Even if it was, horrible pain, if you had a kidney stone, okay? Can you sit down now and say, okay, I'm going to regenerate that pain in my kidneys? No, you can't. Okay? But we have an ability to do that with emotional pain. Emotional pain is, okay, just as an example, now you had a car breakdown, so you felt worried, so you texted me and you said, okay, I'm going to be half an hour late. Okay, the emotional pain is the fire alarm. Oh my God, he's going to be there. He's going to wait for me. The action that you took is, okay, I'm going to text him, right? So the emotional pain triggered the positive action on your side. So like withdrawing your hand from hot water, emotional pain is also useful. But here's the interesting thing. With emotional pain, you can come back again tomorrow and say, I feel so bad that I was late.
Yes.
Okay. And then you can come back after tomorrow and say, I'm always late.
Yeah.
Right. And you come back after tomorrow and say, I'm a failure. Right. And that is that none of those is an actual event. You're not late anymore.
No.
The event is over. Okay. Yeah. All of these are generated by our brains. They are the Netflix of unhappiness. They're basically our ability to torture ourselves on demand without escaping the fire. And that is completely optional. And it's a very stupid option to pick. It's like, imagine if you went to a dentist and the dentist told you, look, I have two packages for you. One where it's going to hurt you in the here, and then it will hurt you a little bit tonight, but tomorrow you'll wake up fine. And the other one, very good package. Look at this. I can make you feel the pain now, and then tomorrow the same time you feel it again, and then after tomorrow the same time you feel it again. Which would you choose?
You're not going to go there, are you?
Exactly. But we do that over and over with our unhappiness. We just regenerate unhappiness on demand.
Yeah.
While, by the way, you can choose to stop that by saying, no, brain, I don't want to talk about this right now. Or, no, brain, I want to do something about it. I want to text Mo and say, I'm going to be 30 minutes late. It's fine. And if he can't make it, we'll schedule another time. It is what life is all about, taking action when things go wrong.
Is there something then that we can learn from children about this? Because they seem to have little responsibility for almost anything. Everything is just sort of provided, and maybe their expectations are lower, or maybe, as you say, their equation is right because the events do meet their expectations. Can we learn things from our children?
So again, a very important part of my system is that we are born happy. Okay? Oh, yeah, of course. It requires you to do extensive research of around 14 minutes on YouTube. Okay, look for infants, right? Look for children.
Yeah.
And children, if if they're safe, if they're fed, if they're loved, if they're warm, if they're given their basic needs for survival, what is their state? They're happy. They're
Yeah.
playing with their toes,
Yeah.
right, and giggling. Yeah,
Mm.
and and when you really think about it, they don't ask for an Xbox. They don't want anyone to like their butt shot on Instagram. They don't care about that stuff, right? And really, and reality is they're just constantly happy. And then what happens is a diaper or a nappy, we call it, a nappy gets wet,
Yeah.
right? The nappy gets wet. The child feels unhappy.
Mm.
Okay, why? Because there is a reason for unhappiness. So the child cries. You change the diaper, the child goes back to happiness.
Mm.
Okay, now we, the adults that are roaming the modern world, we're crying all the time. We're constantly unhappy. Okay, and you have to ask yourself why. Because there are tons of wet diapers. We cause ourselves constant
Mm.
constant unhappiness. How do we do that? We think that having a good life is not enough. Having a better life than our neighbor is important. Okay, we think that having a car that takes you from A to B is not enough, or public transport is not enough. No, we need a Bentley, right? We think that having sustaining a reasonable life and spending time with the people that you love, that's not enough. No, you need to be successful and have a big business card. And
Yeah.
all of these things, if you set them as a priority, good luck, right? You're going to succeed in what you set as your priority, or at least you're more likely to succeed. But if you don't set your happiness as a priority, where
Yeah.
do you end up?
I guess social media has to come into play here, because there is just so much dissatisfaction, isn't there, from comparison, and happiness
Well,
determined by the number of likes you get, or how easy is it to judge how happy somebody is from looking at their life from the
of
outside?
course. I mean, the truth is, the current state of social media is making us unhappy. But hold on. I mean, on my social media, I post maybe once or twice a day something that is really going to make you happy. Okay,
Great.
I, I talk about things that are important. Answer questions from my followers. I post clips from my podcast. I post clips from my talks, whatever. Right?
Mm.
There's nothing inherently wrong with social media. All technology is just a tool, right? You can walk at 5 miles an hour or 5 kilometers an hour, and you can achieve 5 miles an hour, and then you can drive a car at 200 miles an hour. Technology has just enhanced your ability to move fast, right? Now you can use that car and drive it, safely at 100 miles an hour and get somewhere quicker, or you can go crazy and drive it like a maniac and kill yourself.
Mm.
Do we blame the car for that? No, it's your choice. You chose to use it that way. Okay, so there is nothing inherently wrong with social media or any. I mean, of course, there is now. That AI is really, really pushing us in directions where we are not aware that we're being pushed to. But
Yeah.
the reality is, you can take charge. I mean, I started a push on social media, a while back, that would take me 7 hours a day of being on social media, and I measure everything. I have
Right.
tools on my phone that measure that. Now I do an hour and 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Okay, and how do you do that? By being aware, by taking charge. The problem with our technology is what I call toxic internet. It's swiping and typing. It's mindlessly doing things without being aware. Again, deliberate attention. I'll give you a great example. My wonderful daughter Aya loves cats. Okay, and I love my wonderful daughter Aya. So what did I do? Every time I was on Instagram, I would spend a little bit of time looking for cat videos and
Yes,
pictures
of
and
which
send them
there are
to Aya.
millions.
Yeah. And so very, very quickly, when I clicked the search button on Instagram, I recognized that the first full page and a half were all cats. Hello, machine, are you playing with me here? Right?
Yeah.
And so basically, I decided to change that. So I did something randomly. The only other video was a woman in a gym working out. Okay, I clicked on that. The next morning, I had three of those in my first page. So I clicked on all three. The third morning, I had only women working out in the gyms.
No cats.
No, it's zero cats. Now, that kind of bias
Yeah.
can be very unconscious. Huh? If you swipe mindlessly and click on what you're shown, you're going to end up in a place where social media is really working against you and truly, truly destroying your morale. Okay, but it's a tool.
So we can consciously then say, what do I want to be seeing in my feed? What
Exactly.
do I want children to be seeing? Do not
Exactly.
click on bad stuff. That's the message.
And do not click mindlessly on stuff that is presented to you.
Right.
Right. Okay. So just like I spoke about news.
Yes.
Spend enough time to get to the facts that you need to know, and that's it. News is out of your day. Okay. On social media, I am here to send something to the world about happiness, and maybe to look at some of the people I actually follow and I'm intrigued by their content, and look at their content, and that's it. Okay. Similarly, I don't watch horror movies. It's like, seriously, life is scary enough. Why do I want horror movies?
With you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't watch violent movies, which, by the way, kills me that our society now accepts that within our living rooms, someone pulls a gun out, points it at someone else's head, and pulls the trigger. Yeah. That's ridiculous. That will never happen in my living room.
No.
Okay. And so those kinds of decisions, you're in charge. And it's all neuroplasticity. Huh? Every time there is one more gun trigger, pulled in your living room, you're more okay with that in life. Every time there is hate speech and violence and people punching each other in your living room, you suddenly believe that life is all about punching each other.
How does that play out with children? I've got a 10-year-old son who's very keen on computer games. And he will say to me, oh, it's fine. It's just cartoons. It's just animation. And yet when you look at it, a lot of it is so violent.
That's a very interesting decision. I am a very serious gamer. Okay. I'm Olympic champion level gamer.
Oh, wow.
And I actually play a game called Halo, which is about shooting aliens. Okay. Having said that, yes, in a gamer's mind, it is all about muscle and tone coordination, and you're attempting to move the cursor to a certain place and pull a specific key. Okay. Having said that, there are games that are extremely violent. Okay. Yeah. So when the choice of a game can actually convince us of things, and I say that again with respect, but a game like Call of Duty, which is advocating killing the enemy, which is also a human. Okay. Who's the enemy? Often a Middle Eastern Muslim, a Chinese person, a Russian person, whatever, because the game views those as the enemy.
Yes.
The truth is, nobody's the enemy. Nobody is the enemy. Huh? The countries can disagree. Unless a human is against you, they're not the enemy. Okay. And that kind of conditioning becomes really really difficult. Huh? Yeah. Now, you asked about your 10-year-old. When my kids were growing up in Egypt, that was the time when satellite free-to-air channels were starting to be introduced. And, compared to our culture, those had a lot more nudity and a lot more, openness, if you want. And I remember vividly, I had a conversation with my wonderful, wise wife, Nibel, at the time. And I said, so what are we going to do? Are we going to prevent them from seeing that and protect them and cocoon them? Okay. Or are we going to actually guide them, because they're eventually going to be exposed to all of this anyway? Okay. And what a good parent does is they lead by example. So Nibel was always a very shy, she's a person who's very refined. And so, yes, we had, movies playing in our living room with our kids next to us. And then there is a hypersexual, scene that comes on screen. And, they're not supposed to see that when they're 7 or 8. Yeah. And Nibel would jump off her seat and take the remote control and say, oh my God, I can't see this. And she would change it. Okay. When my kids became a fully grown man, a fully grown woman, wonderful in every possible way. They kept that same habit of feeling a little unokay with
Yeah.
those kinds of things,
Yeah.
because we didn't isolate them from it, but
Mm.
because we showed them
Yeah.
what we believe is the appropriate behavior on that habit.
Mm.
You want your kids to learn anything, be that thing.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Okay, and games are going to they're going to encounter games in their life,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you might as well become a gamer.
Oh, no. This is my takeaway, is it, from today?
You might as well find. I mean, find some way to be part of their life.
Yeah,
Okay,
I did waste one summer, one year, getting slightly addicted to Plants v Zombies, which is possibly the most mindless game.
is that your first confession on your
I think
podcast
it
about this
possibly is.
openly? Oh my God, I got her to talk about
You
this.
made me say it. Now, your background in tech, before we go, I'd just like to cover off here because you obviously have a lot of ideas about its future. You know, you've seen its significant workings on the inside and this kind of rapid progress of tech. Are you hopeful? Is this going to be a good thing for our happiness?
So I actually finished what was going to be third book, and now my publisher wants it to be my second book for September next year. A book called Scary Smart, and Scary Smart is about how artificial intelligence is moving a lot faster than we realize, and how artificial intelligence is actually going to be the boss, no doubt about it, within 10 to 15 years at most, and how that, like any other technology, can maximize and enhance our current human tendencies in general. And I have to say to you, I started to write that book January 15th, because my son, if you believe in that stuff, sent me a very, very clear message
Mm,
saying stop everything and focus on this. And
yeah.
so I started to write January 14th, honestly not knowing if there is any cheerful side to this at all. Okay,
Mm,
I was literally in the first 5 chapters saying it's a concept that I call the three inevitables. Basically, that things will go really bad. Okay, and then somehow I saw beautiful, mm, reality of what this is all about. Okay, and some page maybe 70 or something like that, I wrote the statement that truly flipped my view upside down, which is there's absolutely nothing wrong with technology. There is a lot wrong with us. Okay, and you have to see it that way. AI is learning from us. Okay, social media is populated by us. Our news networks, these are us working in those places, broadcasting to us. Okay, the tool is not to be blamed at all. Now, here's the beauty of all of this. The beauty of all of this, believe it or not, is that no longer in this world that we live in is the control within at the hands of a few. As a matter of fact, the control of the universe we're living in is the post you, yes, you listening to us, that one person, the post you're going to make tomorrow is going to shape the world, right? And the beauty of our world is that there is so many of us. As a matter of fact, I believe all of us are good people. If we leave our egos behind, all of us are good people. Okay, I think the idea is a call to action. The idea is to say, you know what? Just like I'm not going to use a plastic bottle again, because my single plastic bottle might tip the scale and destroy our world. Okay? I am going to reduce my travel on an aeroplane. Thank God for COVID, huh? Because think about the pollution that we have saved this year. It's almost as if nature is saying, guys, please don't be so self confident. You don't have to fix it. Just stay at home for a few months and I'll fix myself.
mm,
Right? So just like you have to get to the point in our world today, a world that is very fragile, you have to get to the point where you tell yourself, I am not going to destroy my environment because it might be me, it might be my one extra gallon of fuel that tilts the scale. Okay? Similarly, tell yourself, I am going to behave in a way that is full of love full of compassion, and I will tell the world openly, I want to be happy. As my primary target, I want to be happy, not successful, not rich, not fancy. I want to be happy, and I have the compassion in me to make others happy. Because I promise you, as I was writing Scary Smart, I would write a few pages for the reader and a couple of paragraphs for the machines, right? Because the machines will be reading all of this. They are actually reading it as we speak. Okay? As we speak, they're reading our preferences, they're reading the ways we treat each other, they're reading our tendencies, they're reading what we're triggered by and what we aspire to have. Show the world the good side of you. Okay? Because there is nothing wrong with the machine.
We feed the good stuff into the machine.
Absolutely.
And they will then feed it back to us.
Absolutely. There is nothing wrong with tech. Okay. If we behave properly, that tech is going to magnify that amazing behavior and basically says, it will say, okay, humans want to be happy and they want to make others happy. I'll help them with that.
Mo, that is a really wonderful thought to end on. And please, let's hope that that is the beginning of the happiness revolution, and that we have AI and tech and all these other things. And in the meantime, that we can refocus and replasticize our brain with some positive mindsets. I can't believe we've cracked through so much. It's been really awesome and so inspiring to talk to you. Thank you. A million thanks for your time today.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and I'm very, very grateful that you gave me a chance to hopefully make one more person happy today.
Thank you. And that's all for today's episode. What a fascinating man and story. And interestingly, after the recording, Mo did tell me that he is very social on social media, especially his Instagram. Apparently he replies to everything. So there you go. Well, as always, you will find all the links and the resources mentioned on today's show over on lizearlewellbeing.com. There you can sign up for my free weekly newsletter filled with even more ideas for living a happier, healthier life. Huge thanks to all of you who left such lovely reviews. It really does help others to find the show, hopefully a little bit of happiness too. So if you have a moment, just click on a 5-star review. My team and I would be so grateful. Thank you. It would make us happy. So until the next time, go well. Bye-bye. The Liz Earle Wellbeing Show is presented by me, Liz Earle, with production by Amaryllis Earle and Harry Trevithick at Heart Dialogue, with thanks to my producer, Ellie Smith, guest booker, Millie de la Morinière, and assistant researcher, Martha Comerford.